First of all, I'd like to welcome additional members. So, Councillor Parker, Councillor Lomax, Councillor Paul. Councillor Paul is your second in a row SNI meeting to have attended as an additional observer.
Be careful, you know, I nearly ran over the resources manager and we had to cancel the meeting tonight.
Very good. First item is to sign the minutes. Now, before we sign the minutes, actually, there's a couple of issues I wanted to raise, but I'm hoping you'll bring those later. The first one is in relation to B1.2, response to Abbey Retail Park, having an answer back on April's committee, and also B2.2, the 600 UTC spaces. Also, we know we should get some feedback tonight. I'm not sure at what point we'd like feedback on that one. Who has that? It'd be useful to catch that if we do have any. But other than that, there's a couple of items on there we can relate to later, but in terms of their content, anybody got any issues? No, we have those.
Yeah, I think, Chairman, if I may, just on the 2 points you raised on the information, I'm afraid that we haven't got that information for you this evening, so we can't report on that this evening.
Okay, can we please make sure we have that next time? I know that was the officer last time said they'd get that information to us. Yeah, that'd be welcome, thank you.
I'm sure we can actually get it circulated by email within the next day or so.
Yes, please, that'd be fantastic. Anybody, any other comments? Or are we happy to accept those?
Happy to accept them, Chairman, with your provisos.
Thank you.
Could I ask something, please? Because I believe at council there's a couple of amendments made in regards to a proposal post by Councillor Paul, who's seconded by Councillor Manning. In fact, it was Councillor Locke.
Not Councillor Paul. Councillor Paul taking the credit. Yeah.
As usual.
Yeah.
And then just one
Design. Yeah, that's critical. Thank you for that.
However, I did contact the monitoring officers as soon as the papers were released.
Very good, thank you, well spotted. And those have been brought to our attention. So in that case then, if everybody's happy, I'll sign these. Actually, before we move, next one then is that's done. Apologies for absence. Now, Councillor Randall hasn't given an apology, so we should be expecting. Apart from that, we've got a full house, I believe. Thank you. Next one is declaration of members' interest, and of course, as we all know, this is non-political. This group, particularly with the time that we're at, we treat things as objective facts or objective comments, and no political bias in this committee. Other than that, does anybody have any declaration of the members' interest for the items this evening? No one, thank you. Item number 4, 1 year post-implementation review. Now, at the last meeting it was agreed that we actually did look at previous items 1 year after. In actual fact, as you'd have seen already, on this particular item we did already agree to look at it 1 year later anyway. This was the particular item with the leisure, and what we've done, as you can see in the pack, is item 4 is to amend the workflow. And in this particular workflow, you can see in the document. That's right, good evening, welcome. If you look on page 13, you can see the workflow that S&I operate by. There has been a final point added in red, which is a 1 year post-implementation review by Scrutiny Improvement Committee. Only one minor thing, and that's it's got a lowercase n, and that's probably got a capital in. Are we happy with that?
Yes, Chairman.
Very straightforward, thank you for looking at that. So that's post-implementation review. That then actually logically brings us up into 15, because what we've done is we've agreed to change it, we've added it to the workflow, and therefore now you've accepted that's acceptable. We move into work item 5, task panel implementation reviews. This will be an item on every agenda. and we'll know which ones we can look at because of the rolling work programme will indicate that a review is up for a 12-month assignment. For this particular purpose, we've invited Councillor Lomax in, who actually chaired this working assignment panel, to actually discuss with us or go through any particular issues that related to that last year, and if there's anything to raise. And also we're looking to assign it back to a person to go and undertake the review. And we're hoping we can formally perhaps ask Councillor Max maybe if she'll look at that, or if somebody else will look at any volunteers. So let's have a look at it. First of all, the item is actually circulated in the pack. There was a little bit of an issue with the pack this time in terms of the document flow, in terms of some of the formatting. But the document you're looking at is on page 15 in your pack. And if you look on there, there's a copy of the minute. And it actually says that what we resolved was that Council should continue to support and encourage everyone active. Scrutiny Improvement Committee undertakes a review of progress and usage of the sports park in 12 months' time, which is clearly what we're starting to initiate at this meeting now. And the Council should encourage everyone active to continue to make greater use of the Saxon Suite for community activities. Now, according to the recommendations, what we're looking at is to see that those have been implemented, or those have been implemented. Does anybody have any comments on this, and furthermore, can we agree for somebody to go away and look at that and then report back to the next meeting? Before I do, sorry, these are meant to be quick bursts of activity. They're not meant to be long projects. We're looking for a very quick dip report to be done from a quick analysis back to the following meeting to say it's been reviewed and here's what we found. Councillor Randall.
Yeah, the only thing that I've got to say is following recently, only within the last few weeks, I thought that actually everyone active only had the leisure centre and the sports park. I didn't realise it had other fields as well. So yeah, I didn't realise that. So I know that we're encouraging people to use the sports park, but what about the other areas? Are we doing that as well? That was my only comment, really.
I see. It's about the scope, isn't it, Councillor Randall? That's the point, because
I didn't realise.
yeah, what I think we need to focus on actually is it's an interesting point, but we need to, in terms of picking up this piece of work, focus on the exact recommendations, no extra scope. So basically, according to the resolution, the question is: have the council blah blah blah? Have they done what they said they would do? And the second one, I think we can take that as read because that's the project we're kicking off. And the third one will be that the council should encourage everyone active, and all we need to establish is have the council encouraged. So what I'm looking for is any comments about this other than that, to adopt it, and for somebody to go away and do the piece of work and bring it back to the next meeting. Councillor Lomax, then back to you, Councillor.
First of all, Chairman, thank you for inviting me. Secondly, I'm extremely deaf at the moment, so if I'm not speaking up, please tell me, and I may have to ask people to repeat what they've said. However, what I wanted to say partially in reply to Councillor Randall for information is that in fact we actually looked at all of the pieces of ground for which everyone active has become responsible, which includes 3 football areas and obviously the rec. So in fact there were other items that were looked at, and the football area, for instance, at gosh, I forgot what it's called, the one
Browns Road.
Browns Road.
in Drayton.
Browns Road.
No, I'm talking about the informal football areas where we removed the pavilion about 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
You're talking
where
Burton's Meadow.
where the World War I commemorations were held. On that, for instance, there was play equipment which we had to draw attention there and then to the monitoring of the leisure centre contract officer. But although these were noted within the body of the report, they did not form part of the recommendations.
Okay, and in fact, actually, in case anybody needs to refer to it, there is the original task panel report here. But actually, I think what is most clear to me is the fact that these are specifically the areas we're looking at. I mean, I guess the question is, from what we've got written down here on page 15, is that enough information to go and quickly reopen an assignment? And it doesn't. We're not after war and peace here with lots of people sort of saying one person take it on, go and do some analysis, look at the evidence, and then come back to the next meeting. A very short report. This is the original question, the original resolutions. This is the activity that's taken place in the intervening period. And what we're looking at is have those recommendations been achieved, or are they on track or not? And don't forget, in any event, what we're doing now, we're also tracking the implementation when we get Tony's update. So all I'm looking for is very simply, and this is going back to the question we had last time, which I know came from initiated by you, Councillor, is there material objective evidence to say the Council have done what we asked them to do?
It should be a very simple task to look at that. The only thing that I would say, of course, is that there has been one significant change. Again, it was noted in the report, but in fact it will make a difference to item 2, for instance, and that is the failure of the planning application on the REC in relation to the tennis courts and the old bowling club. Now, that is going to have to be dealt with by everyone active, and it will make a difference, perhaps at the sports park. It may make a difference at the sports park. Though with the development of Daventry northwards, whether there is an answer to be had there, but I think we need to know.
Thank you. So, Councillor Lomax, we have to take into account the contextual situation since the original resolution. Thank you. I'll quickly go to Councillor Long, then I'll come to you, Councillor Paul, actually.
I sat on the committee with Councillor Lomax when we did this, and Chairman, I would be, with the background knowledge of what we did, but not being the author of that particular report, I'd be more than happy to take on the review, because I do have the background knowledge. It doesn't, I mean, I know Councillor Lomax is still involved with the chairmanship. It also puts another view on that rather than just coming from the author themselves. The author can then say, yeah, we did it right, or no, we didn't.
Very good. So I'm hearing a volunteer here for this one. And of course you could always have a conversation with any other member on the subject if you want to. Are we happy for Council On to lead this particular project? I mean, it's a quick turnaround, literally come back to the next meeting, done. This is the result, it's very focused. Happy with that?
It's in June.
Yeah, June.
I'm happy to do that.
This is the result, good. And I mean, literally looking for a very simple report. This is a scrutiny, re-looking at the implementations. Wait a minute, Councillor. Yeah. 12 months after, these are the original resolutions, this is a quick background check we've done, this is the findings.
As it was also me that brought the idea, Chairman, of the 12-month review, then perhaps I ought to offer to do the first one so that we put some form of template in place.
Thank you very much. So let's have a quick bit round. So Councillor Paul, you're next, then Randall.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Allow me to speak, not be a member of your committee. Councillor Lomax mentioned the tennis courts and the bowling club. I would assume that the tennis courts are still active, whether they've got a roof on or not. Browns Road, the leisure centre. What I don't see, and I don't have the advantage of having a copy of the report in front of me, would be the amount of facilities that Sport Active are responsible for. I'm assuming Browns Road, the leisure centre, the tennis courts and the defunct bowls club, but I know of no other, and would welcome that information. With regards to encouraging this is a word that the council are encouraging. There are times when you can lead horses to water. I wonder, and Councillor Long has spoken, and I have spoken this in the past, should Sport Active have the cost centre details of, for instance, the Saxon Suite, and then they would be able to come back to you with all the whys and wherefores for the last year.
Thank you, Councillor Paul. I'm going to widen that point out actually, because I think the substantive point here is that, and this is why I keep talking about smart objectives for our recommendations, because some of the words are actually quite difficult to measure 12 months afterwards. And I think what we're going to have to do on this one is use Councillor Long's intellect and knowledge of the project and what he meant the first time round with the context since to actually establish whether that is, we can regard that as encouraging or not. Because we don't have an objective scale saying, what level of encouragement have they given on 1 to 10. We're going to have to take some qualitative feedback on this. But what I think it will help us do going forward is to be much more precise in the way we think about our recommendations where possible.
If I may, Chair?
Yes, please, then we'll come back to Councillor.
I think, first of all, Councillor Randall has just offered to assist me in this. I'd be very grateful for Wendy's help.
Thank you. I'm more than happy for anybody to assist, but please just that one author when it comes back.
I will be the author, but I will be grateful for Wendy because it's useful to have a second opinion sometimes to debate something.
Absolutely.
With regard to your item 3, Chairman, which we're talking about, to me, there's a very simple way of doing this, which actually is to have a meeting with the management of Everyone Active with a single subject, which is, please can you show me what you've done in the last 12 months to promote it?
Yeah.
And I'd look for a detailed list.
Evidence.
And if you can do it, can you show me what you did in the 12 months beforehand? Can you show me what you've done in the 12 months since? And what you did to actually promote the activity between the two? Let's do if you're looking for a standard, let's use the year before as the standard. Let's do a comparative for the second year based on that first year and see what they did and see whether or not it's 10 there, 12 there. I don't know, but at least that would give us a substantive comparison to make, rather than have to pick and figure out the which we can't.
Compare and contrast to the previous period. Tony.
If we could just make a couple of observations, Chairman. First, in response to Councillor Paul's questions, if you've got sight of the report, the original task panel report, copies on the table, that actually sets out the sites that you were asking questions about. So that answers that. And the second point, Chairman, was just to draw committee's attention to the template on page 17, which is what we've drafted as a...
Absolutely, sorry, I should have referred to
means to make the report back, to try and keep a simple and consistent form.
Yes, and that's, thank you Tony for reminding us of that, because actually what we've got here, and there's some examples set out here, we've got the recommendations, so it's tabulated, and because it is and thank you for putting that together actually, you've basically got very clear tabulation of the evidence of the implementation, which is what you're talking about, along with an assessment of the effectiveness, a qualitative assessment, and then whether it's complete or implemented. I think the other thing actually relating to that is if there are any further recommendations. Because if you've done a piece of work and you've found there's some more things that could be done within that very specific scope, then I think they should come back to the committee and be active recommendations. And again, as long as we have those in the appropriate period of time.
Would you, Chairman, be prepared if we were to come back, and I'm not suggesting there is, that we were to actually unearth something which actually says, with this review is simply based on the 3 recommendations here. In looking at that, we find that actually there is another subject which actually we could do with a further scrutiny review, deeper than the review of this, but beyond it, we could make a recommendation that scrutiny does take another look at a certain item. Therefore, we could very crisply and easily do that without extending it into doing the review, but making the recommendations that somebody should do that review as part of the ongoing work programme.
Let's just be clear about that. So what you could do, is you actually just bring it back as a clear recommendation.
You would bring it back as a clear recommendation that said, we have uncovered this. This is for S&I committee's discussion. We think that there is an item here that is worth a task panel looking further to do this, but then it becomes the committee and your chairman's decision as to whether you do it or don't.
Back into the wrong work programme and then we
But it will
assign
be
it.
part of those recommendations in a very crisp, clear return to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that makes perfect sense. Everybody agree with that? That makes sense? Yeah, good. Councillor, thank you for that. Councillor Allen, do you have anything else?
No, the only thing I was going to say is going on from Councillor Long's, it's like to set on a meeting. It's just, obviously, the main title is Council should continue to support one and Council should encourage them. That's what we're looking for.
Well, you need to look exactly as resolved.
Yeah, that's right.
So that is very, this is lovely actually because it defines perfectly this.
Council should continue to support and encourage them.
Yeah. I think, sorry, Jeremy, taking on board that point, I totally agree with the point Wendy's making. But equally, you see, is we can look at what the council should actually do. We really ought to take a look and see what the outcome of that encouragement has been. Because it wouldn't be necessarily that we would be saying we're going to take a look at it, but if we do get those statistics that I spoke about a while ago, it may be that we come back and say, actually, there hasn't been a great deal done. This is the evidential proof of their statement. Perhaps somebody should take a look at it and develop it further.
That's fine. I think that's right. I think that because there's a difference here between you've got evidence that what was resolved has taken place, or whichever means that evidence is found, whatever form that is, and then also I think what you're saying is impact. What is the impact of this action?
If as such the action hasn't developed an impact and there hasn't been a result, then it should be to come back and say, we think something needs to be done a little bit further here to actually, because otherwise we've just stood still rather than going forward and got the resolution that we were looking for.
Can you also please make sure that you have a look at the rationale behind basically if the resolutions haven't been followed, why that is? Because that fundamentally is of importance to us as well. Yeah, thank you. Any further comments on that one? Councillor Paul.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you to Tony for the hollows, the fish pond and the headlands. I've already mentioned a cost centre analysis of the Saxon Suite. I would find it extremely interesting with the amount of activities on those three sites that I've just named. If there is any, it's certainly not evident.
Councillor Paul, what I'd like to do is that's noted. Councillor Long will go away as per the resolutions, focus on those and contextualise it.
Yeah, please treat that as a
So if there's basically, so you'll come back within the area, so whatever it says, you'll understand what that means, and you'll look in terms of the full operating scope, and you'll come back to us with the facts and figures. And this table actually, I mean, even though the space is quite small, of course, that can be expanded for a couple of pages for each answer if you need it. But that's helpful. Councillor Max, do you have any other comments, bearing in mind it was the committee, the panel you chaired in the first place?
No, I haven't got any further comments to make, except that I do think there are things which may benefit from further investigation. So I do welcome Councillor Long's suggestion that should that turn out to be the case, that it's a recommendation for further task panel. But I do think there are probably items which the task panel, the original task panel, did note that we might actually have to.
Yes, I think we need to make it clear that what we'll be looking at is our starting place. Whilst they can read the background reports, the starting place is the resolutions.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's within the latest context what we'll investigate.
Yes, indeed.
But during that process, like you say, Councillor says, there may be issues which require further investigation. And the mechanism to get further investigation is back to the committee through the rolling work programme. Job done. Gets
I think
adopted.
that Chairman is actually what the Scrutiny Committee is here for.
Absolutely indeed. Good. So we've got, thank you Councillor Long for agreeing to adopt this particular work programme. Back next meeting please, use the template. We keep a consistent format for all of us then going forward, and in the next meeting we'll have some further. In that case, unless there's any other further comments, we'll move on to the next agenda item. Thank you for that. Thank you, Councillor Evans.
Excuse me, Chairman.
Thank you. Nice and straightforward. But it's a very, as you know, it was a very good report to start with.
And of course, Councillor Long always anything more to do.
If required, I shall come on to the interview.
Thank you very much. Right, so the next item on the agenda is item 6, and this is a review of DDC's Rural Economic Role Strategy. Now, Councillor Perry, originally you said this was coming through in June, so this is your opportunity to give us the verbal update. So please, the floor is yours. Talk us through where you are, what your thinking is so far, and please reassure us that we'll expect the full report in June.
Well, probably disappoint you all, but we have met as a panel. We haven't engaged with officers as yet because we have been, although we didn't have much success with Wendy's evidence and links, the links which we did get provided so much evidence and sort of changed some of the thoughts we had of how we go about it. We have Councillor Frenchman is working on how we contact rural businesses. One issue to flag up, we don't know if we're going to provide our own database or whether there's a database we can tap into at the council. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on at other councils which we're trying to think how we can get further information, and there might be some more issues with Wendy to try and get some actual contact with one or two of the councils to try and get some more in-depth information on particular policies they've got. There's certainly, it's very broad. There's some interesting figures from the government. The rural economic role encompasses a lot of things. We're looking at diversification, new business, tourism comes into it, food and drink, leisure. There's a whole lot of economic opportunities there. So we've been a little bit inundated, and I've worked on a series of questions which will be going out to officers. The ones which were originally on the task panel, we now expanded it to a few other areas. One in particular which wasn't on there was the finance department, with their role with business rates and things like that. So it's actually becoming a bit of a devil and beast, because the more we see out there, the more it raises questions to ask. I'm still hoping to get it done by June. It depends on how we can formulate, because we feel that it's important that we have a local business perspective. And we've got some ideas of where to go on relevant themes within the investigation. And we'll probably be contacting the rural members to get them to provide some businesses of different sizes if we haven't got a ready-made database which we can tap into. Whatever method we do, it's going to be very much difficult to say it's a scientific thing without surveying every rural business. So we'll get some interesting feedback, but whether that's satisfactory for the powers that be when they look at it at strategy group, I don't know. But it will certainly, I think, aid the debate and discussion and probably get us thinking more what we could do.
Are there any areas at the minute where we've got obvious gaps that we can start filling or thinking about to even make sure you have something for June to give us some focus?
One of the issues which I'm particularly interested in is around Lancashire County Council. We have obviously looked at Northamptonshire County Council's role and what they're doing. We found it particularly interesting at Lancashire in regard to how they've developed a scheme with Funding Circle, which is a peer-to-peer lending organisation where they administer grants and loans to businesses within the catchment area of Lancashire. Now, we've had the information from the website, which it looks all very good, but it's how we get that more, how successful it's been, because it could be a money earner for the council. It could also facilitate finance to small businesses where they wouldn't necessarily get finance from the bank if the bank's more interested in lending to big companies. And the sort of schemes which they've lent to are, say, like farms who've got an old building which they would have converted to a farm shop. People who are contractors doing work, whether it be hedge trimming or grass cutting, but then need to get new equipment, and it's the upfront cost of getting that equipment and how it works, and whether it's been successfully won, what it's achieved, whether it's made any money, or is it that risky that everyone's defaulted on it. The only people who go to Funding Circle and Lancashire County Council.
Are there any real clear ideas at the moment where you could say there's a particular scheme that you could bring and really actually focus in on a couple of key areas?
Well, we have been concentrating on the actual strategy, and from what we've sort of looked at the website, we think there is definitely a scope to use the look Daventry. We don't see anything, and this is the unfortunate thing, and it's perhaps unfair to say it without having spoke to officers, the role at the moment is very much hidden, and there's no such thing as an economic strategy as such, although that was the consensus of the committee. Very little is done, although obviously when we discuss with officers they'll probably tell us, oh no, that's not the case, there's a lot going on, but it's all done and it's not seen by us doubting Thomases.
What's the committee? You mean the work panel?
The work panel, yeah. As I say, with the different experience we have on the panel, it's been interesting having a look at other organisations, whether it's CPRE, etc. Because I think that's helped stimulate the ideas, the thoughts, and where we could go or not. And as I say, it's one of those things it would have been easier if it would have been a one-man panel, because you'd been quite clear and you would have done. Now we've got, obviously, different people. Scrutiny, who's got some experience, obviously being a farmer, but having businesses which he rents property to around the farm where it's older different buildings, and obviously Council Federal Transport, but it starts to get a little bit wieldy.
You have to keep focused.
But we're trying to keep focused, looking at the strategic, and also it'd be quite easy for us to say, yes, you need an economic strategy. But we think, I think personally that there are key themes which we can look at and promote within a strategy. One of them being food and drink, one of them being tourism.
Different business sectors.
Different business sectors.
Let me stop you there for a moment. There's a couple more questions and I'll open it to the floor. Do you have any lessons from Weedon Depot, for instance, as an exemplar of how you could develop
as much as I love Weedon Depot, I've been trying to look at other businesses. Not, there is obviously, I think Weedon Depot is mainly stuck in the planning. That is, we did highlight the planning department for some questions on some of the policies, and I think we're more interested in sort of the role of the planning department and how approachable are they. Because it's just as difficult for a small business as what it is a dinosaur like Weedon Depot to get the right assistance, because everybody wants their application passed, and we have to counter that. We obviously have to look and sometimes say no.
It's recommended, I think, then that you focus in a couple of key areas and perhaps
Well, as I say,
analyse it a little bit more.
we've sort of been looking at, as I say, diversification, tourism, food and drink. That covers most of the areas.
Councillor Perry, can we have, if not the full report in June, I realise there's a lot of work to focus on that, a written interim report in June?
We should have some.
And please communicate clearly with the committee. Tony?
Yeah, I think just picking up on some of your earlier comments, Councillor Perry, particularly around getting information and understanding what information is available, I think it's important that you ask us the questions about that. You mentioned business rates. There will be some information there, and there will be other sources of information. So I think if you could give some thought to what information sources you're looking for, and perhaps through Wendy, we can source that or point you in the right direction.
I mean, I did have some questions for finance, but they got retuned because it had a little problem with our post office asking about this, which gave us interesting thoughts about another thing which could be in the strategy. So I then ripped those questions up and restarted.
I think
but they will be out shortly.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. I think I'd rather maintain momentum, and even if it's an interim next week, which gives us a very clear indication of where you're going as a written report, that'd be favourable. If not the final report. Any comments or questions? And by the way, I'll wrap this up at the very latest at 7 o'clock. Councillor Paul.
Thank you, Chairman. I did send you an email regarding planning in the rural areas. Quite often, it has been a block to encouraging business. Quite honestly, there have been areas where Farmer Giles would want to put an extra shed on for packaging of his carrots to have, to save sending them away, and etc. etc. I think possibly, with due respect, it is a difficult task, man. Focus should also be made on the planning applications and reasons for refusal. Locally, I mean, if I take, as a quick for instance, Skylark Farm up on the East Daventry Road, it started off with a farm shop. It is now opened up at Christmas for Santa's Grotto. It then has a small bistro, for want of a better word, and quite a large play area for children, so diversity to its nth degree. I don't know if there are any in our district. I don't know enough about some of the outlying areas, if that. I know there is a couple near Stoke Brewer, but...
Sorry, Councillor, what? There are examples of what, sorry?
Other examples of the
similar approach to this.
Nature, yeah.
I think the question, let's zoom in here. The question is, have you looked at exemplars or case studies? And that's a really good example, actually, like Skylights, where you could see they've actually developed.
Well, that's one of the reasons we want business input. There are other examples. What farms have done, obviously, the dairy farm, I suppose, is developed in a different way. It's plenty of down the A5. A lot of them are hidden, the locals know about them, and it's one of the things is trying to look at, you've got the Love Daventry, it's how we as an enabling role can promote. One of the ideas which is being looked at from South Northampton, where they focus on food and drink, they have a food and drink trail where you can go around to the farm shops, the pubs. One of the other issues, well, I've said I focus on food and drink. I know we have a micro-pub in Daventry now, but I've been going to micro-pubs for the last 5 years. I think they're wonderful, and they have a role to play within a village community.
Councillor Perry, thank you. Can I stop there with that example? Because I feel like we're drifting into the content. Let's keep it high level. So, actually, I can perhaps recommend that Councillor Paul might give you some informal advice on the topic and some ideas, but that's a really good example about skylarks. And please perhaps use those, just make it very focused on a couple of topic areas and take some case studies and perhaps see if we can generalise from the learning if there's any blockages or any information requested. Perhaps go to the SMT like Tony's offering. Tony, do you have a point?
Yeah, just one point actually on the Love Daventry campaign. We are looking to build on what we've achieved so far. So if that was an area that you felt could be useful to you, then it would fit with something we're going to be doing anyway. So.
Yeah, I think actually it's a win-win. It's a low cost and could do a lot.
That's really about a communication strategy though, isn't it? But you still have to have the core strategy in place first, have some focus areas on it. Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Patchy.
With regards to rural businesses, a very member input could be quite useful to a particular applicant as well. Skylark and non-metropolitan.
So please make sure you leverage the resources you have. Okay, let's. Anything else? Anybody else?
Just very briefly, Chair.
Because
of adverse publicity, whatever it was, 4 or 5 years ago, I involved myself with the Whedon Barracks, and at the time called in the then developer and senior officers here. Here we are. An additional 4 or 5 years onto the previous 30 years that I've known the place being derelict. But apart from that, no further comments.
Well, apparently it's supposed to be a new owner at some point this year. Allegedly.
Yeah. Thanks. Let's still in specifics anyway. So thank you for that, Colin Paul. I'm sure I could bring my own stories about that to the table. Let's move on to the next agenda item. So before we do, but wrap that one up. We understand it's a big piece of work, it's very significant, very important, but please make sure we have some tangible goals for the next meeting, be it the full report which you're expecting, or at the very least a written interim report submitted in good time for the meeting. Thank you. Let's move on to the next item. This is Councillor Patchett. According to this, we're going to consider the corporate complaints, Councillor Patchett final report. Last meeting we had Councillor Randall give a verbal update in Councillor Patchett's absence. Councillor Patchett is going to first of all set the scene again for us, recap on the objectives of this, and then actually going to make some very clear recommendations from the document that we carry forward, which then move through the system as per the protocol which we saw earlier. So, the floor is yours, Councillor Patchett. Let's give some time to discuss it and debate it before we move to the conclusion of the recommendations.
Before we start, would you like us to go through each individual advice item and discuss that, Chairman, or would you like to go do the whole lot?
Give us a quick big picture. But what I'm really interested in is quick background, objectives, methodology, quick results, factual objective, please, and then talk to the recommendations. Sorry, before you start, our objective is to get recommendations, leave these committee, which are smart, nice and tidy. Think about in a year's time, when we come back, we've got to audit this again, how we're going to do that. Audit's probably the wrong word, but you understand what it is.
To come back in a year's time to see if some of the recommendations have been implemented by officers, is probably the way forward as far as that's concerned.
Well, I think you need to think about it in that way. So, as we've seen earlier, we had a 12-month post-implementation review. How easy is it for us to evaluate the performance? Bear in mind we're talking about performance always. So please move on and talk us through your project.
Okay, well, basically, we felt that there was a number of issues that needed resolving.
Speak up, please.
There was a number of issues that needed resolving with the complaints, the procedure and process, and to keep the task panel focused was quite difficult, and we had to sort of people narrow down. What I would like to note in the minutes, if I'm very chairman, is thanks to Katie Jones and her team and customer services, to team there, they looked at all the things that the panel put to them with enthusiasm, and I'll explain why shortly. So we have first of all some advice which were on page 19.
Can I just clarify this? Is this advice or are these recommendations?
There is advice from the mail on the recommendations coming out of
Can I make it very clear for future reference? That advice is advice and recommendations are much more focused, and we don't want to bubble them out. So we can make sure we're very clear about the recommendations in a minute, but carry on.
There was some initial information that was sent to senior management. Senior management have indeed commented on the information that was given to them, and subsequently the papers that you have in front of you is the result of that dialogue between the panel and officers. Number one, point to number one.
Sorry, right. Can you just speak a bit, please? We can all hear. So,
yeah.
Are we now moving to the recommendations? Yeah.
So we're moving to point 2 on page 19.
Right. What about point 1? Oh, sorry. Point 2, advice. Yeah. Do apologise.
Point 1. It's the committee notes the recommendation. Committee notes the following work and recommendations to the senior management team carried out by members of the task panel and officers of the customer services team. And that list of recommendations is on page 51.
Okay, stop there. So, just to be clear, everybody, there is a Appendix 7 in your document which you've read, which relates to some work in programme that was done. We're not being asked to recommend this, we're simply being asked to note it.
Now, from the, just to fill you a little bit, Councillor Park and Councillor Landlord went along and spent the day with the customer services team, and there was quite a lot of information that came out of that, which is in the report, and the main points are listed on the task panel report, complaints day work.
Okay, so let's for the sake of it, I'm sure everybody's read that because that's the point of sending out the items in advance. In terms of this particular item, it's simply, we don't need to, apart from just in the minutes, we don't need to do anything with this because it's just noting that the report is there.
It's that the notice that the senior management carry out the recommendations to the panel.
But the panel doesn't recommend, Councillor Patchett, that's the point. The panel does not recommend. The panel recommends to the committee recommends and moves on. The panel does not recommend.
If I may, Chairman, I think there is a little bit of confusion around this. It appears to me, reading page 19, so advice, first item of advice, the committee notes the following work and recommendations to SMT, and then that refers you to Appendix 7. It appears there are a list of 6 recommendations within Appendix 7, which I think we need clarity. Certainly from the committee's point of view, is the committee
recommending those or not? Yes, and that's the question. Now, the way Councillor Patchett's written this, these simply are noted, but they're basically, unless they're on this page and we formally take them as recommendations, then they are not recommendations. The panel does not make recommendations directly to SMT. You put a report in which states the recommendations you're intending to make at this committee. So you either keep them in there or just take them out and have them as separate recommendations. We can't have 2 sets of recommendations in different places.
The list on Appendix 7 is advised to senior management team that they carry out the things that are...
So that's advice to them, not a recommendation.
It's advice to senior management. What I would like to do at this point is to ask Councillor Parker, who is a member of the panel, one of the two members who took out did the day work, just to explain to those here what the root cause analysis actually is.
Just before Councillor Park actually does do that, do we actually need to know for the purpose of getting through this next point of the exercise? To me, what's substantive is you're going through your advice, which is basically your recommendations, that the committee notes the following were on Appendix 7. I'm happy to note that and then move on to the next item, or you want to bring those out as recommendations. You've got two options. Which one is it?
Well, I think we should pause on that at this point and see if any other members wish to comment on this particular point.
Yes, we can do. Yeah. Anybody got any comments regarding the comment which is to note the appendix as in the written document?
Chairman, the principle is that is the better way forward. It's just to note it.
To note it.
I think you land up going into an area of confusion if you're not careful. Noting it actually gives it some form of credence.
Yes, and because the point is, in principle, and I had this discussion with you prior to this, the appendix is not a place for recommendations. It needs to come through the front page, recommendations. So you put here, noted.
Well, the way I see it, Chairman, is that it's for the customer services team, the senior management, to sort out the issues that have been highlighted to them by the panel. And it's not for this committee to make specific recommendations as to how.
Well, actually, that's complete nonsense, Councillor Patchy, because the purpose of this committee is to review performance through the task panel and make formal recommendations to strategy group. That is as outlined in that process. So let's make this simple, because we'll be here over an all night otherwise. Is it what I'm proposing we do is simply have it as you've written down here, that the committee notes it and move on to the next item. You have not got the power to make recommendations directly. It has to come from our committee. Think of it this way, in some respects, probably better, I don't want to use the term technically like an auditor, but you're kind of auditing when you're doing that role. You're not there to consult. You come back to the committee and say, we've reflected, here's the evidence, here's our objective recommendations. That's it. There's no other way. You can't reconfigure the way we operate. This is the way we operate. So let's take number one as it's noted. Okay, that's the way we'll operate it. Let's move on to number two.
Okay, item 2.
So is this a recommendation or not? We're looking for clear recommendations.
The recommendation is that the revised complaints reporting format is adopted by council with one addition to the appendix on page 23. Look on the top right hand corner. One of the issues which has been a problem with the reporting format is that only the information that is received in the call centre is included in the report. With today's increased IT usage and other forms of people coming into the main office and making an item of feedback, then that should also be included in the column.
This Appendix 1 here that you've got, which you're asking for the council to adopt as a format, is it exactly as you've written it here?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
With the exception of the item that I've just highlighted.
And where does the item you've just highlighted fit on this table?
It's on the top right hand corner.
The number of calls. You want an extra column there?
Yes, there doesn't need to be an extra column. What needs to be included in that column is the total number of calls and web hits. And
so you need a new column. You want to measure those separately, those items. They shouldn't be conflated, should they, for clarity purposes. Why isn't it? What I don't understand is why is it not already laid out in here as we want it to be recommended to the committee?
it is laid out, except for the fact that the bill in brackets, which says main switchboard only, appeared, which wasn't the general idea. The general idea was when it's calls from the call centre switchboard should be included in that column.
Yeah, I think actually what Councillor Padgett is saying is that, you know, if a complaint comes in, it doesn't matter whether it comes in via letter, via email, via telephone call, they should be recorded as one number of complaints. That's what you're saying, is it? Is that
So
right?
basically, you just basically want that to say no number of complaints received. What does it need to say?
Total number of complaints received, yes.
Right, total number of complaints received. Let's take that. Councillor Long.
Chairman, I have read the document through. I've sit and listened to the debate so far, and it would seem to me at this moment in time we are trying in committee to reconfigure a report to make it suit what we wanted to do. Is it not better to actually withdraw this particular item, take it away, re-look at it, and bring it back to the committee in a format which is acceptable, rather than overall?
It's a very good question, Councillor.
Because at the moment we're trying to take a report and we're trying to what should have been a complete report, and I'm not having criticism. It should have been a complete report. From the debate, it's not a complete report. It's not easy to follow. If you're going to push this through, I would have thought it would be better to have it in a format that everybody can understand with any change.
I think we've got two options actually. Because I know you've been working on this for a while. We either take a little bit of time just to get it into shape, or you come back to the committee with it. I think it's. Thank you. I think it's fairly self-evident. It's not as clear as it could be. Councillor Paul.
Advice, if I may, Chairman, from our officer. Am I correct in saying that all complaints, as Councillor Randall has said, irrespective of email, front desk or call centre, are they not listed on the CRM system? So if Joe Bloggs complains on day 1 about the cat barking next door, and on day 2 the cat's still barking next door, then that would be registered as 2 complaints. Or would it be registered as a single complaint?
That's the problem, Councillor Paul.
Sorry?
That's part of the problem, is it isn't Paul.
No, I'm asking a question of the officer, I beg your pardon.
Councillor Paul, can we part the question actually? But what I would like to say is actually, having reflected on this, I'd like to send it away and ask for it to come back again in a more coherent format. And I would like it to be very clearly stated, if it's a recommendation, it's a recommendation. All the recommendations sit in one place, not in multiple appendices. That is a complete nonsense. So let's bring it back in June as you've seen other documents produced and have come to committee, been very logical. Last time I was here, I know you missed the meeting, but I highly commended Councillor Long's document, which is very clear, very coherent, does the job. This has got a little bit confused, so let's send it back until June. Councillor Randall.
Yeah, thank you. I think actually when we recently had some training, that was one of the things that was highlighted, advice number 2. Why are we putting advice? And I think that's what you've almost done, is follow along. That advice not needs to be there. We need purpose of report number 2, just be recommendations. That's when I think that's where it gets a bit confusing. And
I think I've had this conversation before. I want a very clear flow between what it is, what you did, what you found, conclusion. By the time you get to your conclusion, it should be very self-evident. You have recommendations at the front and it just map across. And I'm looking for no more than 5 very clear, smart recommendations. No multiple documents everywhere. Job done. I think we can probably all learn from this tonight as a committee. Let's move it on till June.
Chairman, if I may also, just to confirm your recommendations, if you go back to the report that I wrote on working with other authorities, we did just that. The 5 pages of the report actually contained all the information effectively of what we were doing, and all the appendices contained all the reference documents. So effectively, the front pages told the story. The back pages were where you went to the reference should you need to back it up.
Yes, and I think the other point is, Councillor, thank you, is I know you commented that it's quite a complicated process. To me, this is not complicated. This is actually our job, is what I call complexity reduction, which is we look at the performance issue, we make sure that in a very short document it can be articulated, because of course normally the public might sit here as well. It's very clear to anybody what the issue is, what clear recommendations are to resolve it, and it's got, I would say, a level of consensus, because the case is so compelling that it's obvious that this is what we should be doing. So, are you happy to bring this back in June, or you can even delegate it and bring it to come back in June? Well, I'll say, are you happy? What I mean is, I'm asking for it to come back in June. Whether you bring it back or not is your choice. But it's not. I think that the consensus is it's not going to work tonight. It is. Thank you. Let's move on to the next agenda item. So here we've got the rolling work programme. Again, the document is in your pack. Unless anybody wants to add any material at this point or take on board one of the programmes, because of where we are in the cycle of scrutiny, I'm happy to not take any new recommendations tonight unless we need them, want them. I've got a couple actually I'd like to raise, which we can have a discussion about, to put on the work programme, but I'm not necessarily looking to assign anything this evening. I think what we'll do is we can assign those at the next meeting. I'd like actually to clear the decks on this one, get Councillor Patch's back, get Councillor Perry's. But does anybody have any assignments they would like to add to the rolling work programme?
Yeah, the only thing that I am concerned about is the fact that we did say we were going to review the enterprise contract, and obviously because of the position it's in, we haven't done that. Now, should we or should we not?
Chairman, if I may, is it not on page 53?
The rolling work programme is on. Oh, got some interesting colours on here actually. So, it's page 53, yeah, absolutely. So the question you're asking is, should it now be reviewed? I think it's in our gift to go and review it if we so choose. But I think we can take a pragmatic view on it and say, because we know there's a lot of activity taking place on there at the moment, would we bring anything new to the discussion?
Well, I'm just wondering, and I can't remember, if we had it as a recommendation, and thinking if it come as a recommendation, which I can't now remember if it was a recommendation to review it, we should be following our recommendation because that's what we agreed. That's the only thing.
We should actually, by definition, we should have looked. Because we've only put in a new system this evening about going back formally after 12 months and looking at it. By definition, because it's now come off the list, we could actually do a review of the original recommendations. I think that'd be quite a bit active to do that. Tony.
Chairman, if I may, just to remind you of discussion at last meeting where there was a desire to have Councillor Cribbin in front of the committee, and that may well give committee a position statement in effect and may inform future task plans.
Yeah, and of course our objective is to ask him for next time to come in, because of course he couldn't make it this evening. So thank you for that, Tony. Perhaps, Councillor, what we can do is we invite him in next time, which of course he already has been invited, is accepted, and depend on what he says next time, have him back in. Yeah. Happy with that? And we'll take a view on it then.
Yeah.
At this point, the only two pieces of work I would like to raise as potential additions. Councillor Paul, are you okay?
Yeah, sorry.
That's fine.
Just no, Councillor Paul was, rather than interrupting, Chairman, he pointed something out to me. That was all.
Okay. Does it need to be shared with the meeting?
No, it doesn't. It was just a prompt for me.
Okay, thank you. Let's. Is there any? So okay, I'm not looking to assign any work this evening, but do we have any suggestions for future work assignments?
Well, following on from the Amy contract, and subject to a meeting I'm having tomorrow, I would say we could possibly investigate the management of closed churchyards. I wait to see what comes out of the meeting tomorrow. But
let's put that on the programme anyway, and we can have a look at it. So, management of closed churchyards. Thank you.
Could I make an additional comment, Chairman?
Yeah.
Reverting back to your earlier comments, that we are late in this particular council year, and of course it will depend upon the elections as to how many members are returned, who is returned. There may be some fresh faces. You may even have fresh faces on your committee. I suggest, obviously, you've taken this one. Would it not be better to actually, from having taken that one, actually delay this one to June, in as much that your new committee with new ideas might come up with some ideas that this committee may not even think about, rather than going too far with it?
It's a fair point, Councillor Long, and that is one of the reasons why I didn't want to assign any work this time, because of obviously the general election and so on. And we know it's already given us an interesting evening this evening because we've invited people and not been able to attend. But what I'm minded to do is actually add on management of churchyards, because I think we'd like to capture that. So we'll capture that. And actually what I'll do is I'll just give you one issue that I wanted to look at, actually, not chairman's privilege, but and it's an issue that's occurred to me before, but I'm not exactly sure where it's located, but perhaps we can get Tony's input into that potentially, and that is car washes, hand car washes. And I'm actually interested in them for a number of reasons, but I'm not sure where they fit as a performance issue. But I have a concern about the collection of revenues from them, tax and so on, business rates. And I'm also concerned about some of the other issues that relate to them, such as planning issues, environmental issues, health and safety issues, labour workforce issues. And I don't know if it's been explored. I think, Tony, we might have discussed it very briefly once before. There was an interesting. I've been giving this some thought for quite a while, even in my kind of work head on, if you like. And there was an interesting feature about it on last week on Radio 2, and it kind of made me think perhaps it'd be worth looking at, particularly from just the way they operate. Councillor Paul, you're kind of grinning, so maybe you've got some kind of extra thoughts on this one.
The proliferation of such enterprise, and it also be noted that I've seen very little of the indigenous population encouraging themselves with this practice. They tend to be of Eastern European. They tend to be very hard working, extremely hard working in all the elements. However, you broached upon the subject regarding planning, revenue, etc. And it's an area, I think, that either needs to be capped. I know the moment I mention cap, poor Tony Gillett cringes because of other matters.
Don't think we need to be too random, but look, actually, if you look on the A45, where's that one come from? There was a repurposing of a business, surely. I mean, does that come through planning, for instance?
There is an environmental issue.
Environmental issue on waste.
Sure,
particularly on the
when the
A45.
application of freeways was in, they showed a car wash. They had to have some environmental measures put on. Now, we've had a car wash on the A5 just past the crossroads at Reading. You quite rightly mentioned the one at the A45, and they're obviously redundant garage sites. They're turning them into something else. But I think one of the things, they had to have a catchment to catch the water. It had to be recycled.
Are they complying with environmental
I
regulations?
mean, it got to the point.
How do we know?
I actually stopped going to Sainsbury's in Northampton because I got fed up of being pestered by car washers.
Councillor Randall, let's take your point.
Yeah, no, all I was going to say is there's quite a few town councillors especially that have been in contact with officers about things like fly posting of all these signs and everything everywhere, and I think I've probably got an email, they're aware of where that everybody is, so I might just assume that they're obviously, because they know of them, they would have had everything underhand, so they would know that what they'd be doing with their charging and business rates or everything else.
Oh, that's in relation to the car washes and so on, because they're pretty obvious to spot.
I mean, we all know where they are, so I assume the council would know that somebody's there, so they wouldn't be allowing them to operate out of practice. I wouldn't have thought.
Well, I would be interested to know what checks take place and what impacts they have and how they're monitored and regulated. And at the moment, I think for me in particular, there's a question mark here on how that's done. And maybe it's all in order, I don't know. Tony?
Yeah, I think, Chairman, I mean, there are a range of issues that have been tabled here, but certainly key amongst them from what I'm hearing are the environmental issues. And I think given that Councillor Cribbin is invited to come along to your next meeting, it may be worth adding that to his list, so it's not just any contract, it's he can give an environmental view on what the issues are.
Yes. Okay. Councillor Padgett, do you need your laptop out?
Well, I do in the back,
Yeah, I find it very distracting.
Chairman, can I just ask one question, please? And it's with regard to the proposal you're putting forward. And please don't take this as a criticism, it is a genuine question which perhaps Tony or yourself might be able to advise on. We're in a position where you've raised this particular subject. Could I just, not question, but ask the legitimacy of this particular subject for a scrutiny committee, inasmuch the scrutiny committee is seeking to review and to put recommendations forward, etc. Whereas when you look at some of the items that have been put forward in terms of what might be involved here, i.e. planning, environment, etc., should it not be the planning department or the environment department taking a look at this as a matter of course, or just to justify it, effectively a recommendation might come out from the committee that environment and planning take a look at it? Now, I just asked the question to try to make sure that the horse is before the cart rather than the other way round, because it wouldn't necessarily be, I don't think, for this committee to look at whether or not it's right for planning or it's the revenue side of it. There are departments within the authority which would particularly do just that.
Yes, and I think, Councillor, this is why it goes on the Royal Work Programme, because that gives us the opportunity for the scoping process of actually doing some investigation, because I think we don't operate in a vacuum, and as we go about our business, we spot there might be issues or things to look at. But obviously, and we've had this with Councillor Padgett before, we need an evidence base to start the work, and that's the purpose of the scoping document, to go and evaluate further whether there's a case to be something to be instructed. I'll come back to you in a minute. Councillor Perry.
If you wish to keep clear and focused on the subject in hand, I'd be lovely to say that for weeks, but I see it as a matter you could look at, simply because taking the concerns which could be enforcement concerns, you could turn around and say should the council be doing more to regulate the activity of? And it could be that they decide no action, or it could be they would devise some sort of bylaw. It's happened with there was some years ago, there was some planning policy devised to limit, I think, food establishments before the licensing act come on, and it's carried on, because we actually did it for Daventry district, didn't we? I can't think of the act, but we regulated it so they didn't just pop up with their greasy burger vans here, there and everywhere and cause mayhem. And that, I would say, would be a legitimate issue, to see what the issues are of the activity and is it worthy. And obviously, if there's other things,
and that's the point, Councillor, you don't necessarily know, and that's the point. We have a discussion about it here, then we assign it onto the programme. And I mean, that's why we have the scoping document, because that's a break to make sure we understand if there's an issue to be investigated and how we go about it. So, absolutely, thank you, I agree. Councillor Rundle.
Yeah, I would have just thought a simple email to the business manager just to actually ask him about those points you've raised, and then he would be able to come back and just tell you in an email. And if it's something that they've overlooked, then
might be as simple as that.
Yeah, just as simple as that.
But what I recommend we do is put it on the work programme, and that can act as a catalyst. Councillor Paul.
Yeah, I think because of, as I've already said, the proliferation, they seem to be, they seemingly be unregistered. If it's a greasy sausage van, we know that they should have a licence to trade in a lay-by, etc., etc. They are, at most, that I've seen, are operating on another's property. So I would assume, the rateable value of that property, should it be increased or not. But I think all this should be, as you said, within a scoping document, and to find out if there is a way forward. But I think, as far as revenue, environmental health, we're all very conscious that we have two main reservoirs in Daventry, and it's very nice that my colleague has mentioned, the recycling of water within that plant. However, if they don't recycle that water, could it be contamination of reservoirs, and also
It could be contamination of water courses, and that's what I think we'll do is, and this is the point, we have got Councillor Scrutiny, we'll raise it with him, or we could actually send an action, perhaps, Tony, to you, if this is possible, maybe, to actually to go and speak to the business manager and come back to us, maybe, and see if there's any, to give us an update at the next meeting. Can we just have that formally resolved then? So we'll do that, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's because it's cross-cutting, crosses a number of service areas. I think, through me, I can bring back a briefing note to say what our position is, what our understanding of it, and that will help inform any future debates.
Thank you, Tony. And then we can act upon that accordingly, and it's always using that evidence basic as a performance issue. This is more of an intuition. Okay, so Wendy, that's for Tony to come back next meeting with an update on that and how it's governed. Good. So we'll leave that off the work programme for now, because we've got that as a formal update. So, okay, good, thank you. Let's move on to the next item. This is quite unusual insofar as that we won't be assigning any work this evening, for good reason, because of the point in the cycle. So, yes, we'll leave that one. So just to recap, so we'll add on the churchyards, but we'll leave off car washes because Tony's going to come back formally with an update for the June meeting. The next one is over to Tony again, item 7, Action Implementation Plan, to provide an update. This is an update from you, Tony, when you talk us through the implementation.
Yes, Chairman, it's just really reminding members of where we are with the glass panels that left here last time. The PDC is contacting a number of local authorities. Report was received by Strategy Group on the 9th of April. and the recommendations from that from S&I were accepted by Strategy Group and will go to Council in May. And the next task panel, communicating the corporate strategic plan. Similarly, that was received by Strategy Group on the 9th of April. There were 9 recommendations which left S&I, and 8 of the 9 were accepted by Strategy Group to go on to Council.
8 of the 9?
8 of the 9. I can inform you of the one that wasn't, if that's helpful.
I think that's okay. Well, I think we were pretty saw it, but I think that's a pretty good result, actually, 8 of 9. Unless anybody wants to have that.
Chairman, sorry, not on that one. Can I go back to the previous one, which was the contracting one?
Yep.
On the Strategy Group agenda, towards the end of the Strategy Group agenda, was in fact the corporate plan for procurement for the next 4 years. It was really pleasing to see that the recommendations that were in the report that we had put forward for local authorities, it actually encapsulated quite a number of the items we put forward. So the timing of our report was very timely in relationship of that coming forward. So I just wanted to raise that it was actually same night, same committee, just a few items later that it went through.
Very good. I'm sorry I wasn't able to be there, actually. And interestingly enough, the reason why I couldn't, because I was at another meeting in my work which is related to a British standard which has been developed around collaboration, which I'd be interested to know, which might be turned into an international standard, an ISO standard. I don't know if you've come across that, Tony, at all. I can't remember the exact number, 11,400 or something crazy. An actual British standard setting out collaboration between different organisations, particularly in relation to this.
Okay, if I continue, Chair, in fact, Councillor Longstone's and I.
I'm sorry.
It's a good reason.
But what I was going to go on and say, for those 2 task panels, that whilst we're waiting for Council to accept or otherwise the recommendations from Strategy Group, work is progressing. Council has drawn our attention to certain work on procurement strategy is underway, and again that will be received by Council, but also on the communicating the corporate plan, that actions are happening. So when we next come back to this committee in June,
you'll be able to update us on
we
that.
should be not just reporting actions agreed by Council, but also some of those actions will have been delivered, I believe.
Thank you. Can we just go back a step, because I want to just make a note on my rolling work programme so we can circulate next time, make sure I've totally got this. So review of written formal communication, 2 green, in terms of we're talking about implementations. Let's go down to
So if I may, Chair, you're getting ahead of yourself on these.
sorry, do apologise.
They are the next items on the agenda, the next group of items, but for your rolling work programme, I think what I've just spoken about is assignment 11.
Thank you. Let's have some numbers. So assignment number 11, just be clear, was 2 have been accepted?
2 were accepted by Strategy Group on the 9th of April and will be considered by Council on 20th of May, I believe it's Council. And assignment 12.
Thank you. All ties together beautifully. Number 12.
8 of the 9 were accepted by Strategy Group and will go on to the same Council meeting 20th of May.
20th of May, good. 8 of 9 for the 20th of May. Good.
Okay, if I may then, that takes us on to the next agenda items, which are the action plans for those that have been
already through. So you can see the way it beautifully works through the system seamlessly. As laid out in our document. Our very simple flowchart document. Sorry, Tony, getting excited. Please go ahead.
So if I can continue then. So we're now on to agenda item 7C, which is page 55 of your papers, which is the progress on the action plan on the rural transport task panel. We're reporting the two recommendations as amber, which is no change from last time, but you'll see the red text, which is where progress is being made towards delivering those actions. So whilst we've not completed those actions, things are progressing now.
Gotcha. So for number 10,
Yeah.
recommendations implemented. Just say that again. It's still. Oh no, wrong one. Sorry. I'll tell you what. I'll update it afterwards. Don't worry about it.
Okay, well,
As long as everybody's clear where we are with that particular one.
I've got the notes scribbled on my phone, so I can
As we do more of these, it just gets more and more. You can see originally, Councillor, I was a bit apprehensive about taking the year on because it would just get more columns.
Okay, so moving on to agenda item 7D, which is the plain English task panel.
Yep.
Yes,
please. Yes, please. Go for
It
it.
says the agreed project will be signed with one of the new senior planning officers once appointed. Do we know when? Is it going to be during those? Because I saw I think the senior management meeting minutes that you weren't able to attract anybody for the post.
I don't know the exact details of that, Councillor Patchett, but the latest information we had at the time put this agenda to, we will set ourselves a target of June. If that has changed, then we'll be reporting that next time round. So at the time this document was put together, that was the estimate of timescale.
So updates will be reflected in the next meeting. Thank you. Let's get to the end, Tony, and then we'll take any final questions.
Okay, so 7D, which is the plain English task panel report, which is page 57 of your papers. Progress on that. We've moved from 3 amber and 2 green to 3 green and 2 amber. So progress on that. Action 3 is the one that's been completed since last time. And again, progress on action 5 is shown in the red text. So again, that's moving, but not fully complete at this stage.
Okay.
And then agenda item 7E, which is the public engagement task panel. We are showing amber status on each of the 4 actions, and the red text again shows progress since last time.
Thank you.
Okay, and if we then take that back to the rolling work programme, so just
Scores on the doors.
Scores on the doors, yes. And again, so working from the top down, so assignment 5.
Yep.
Where previously we were showing 2 green and 3 amber. The position today is 3 green and 2 amber. So change there.
Sorry, that again, sorry?
So that's moved to 3 green and 2 amber.
3 green, 2 amber. At today's date,
At today's date. Assignment 6, we're still showing 4 amber, so no change to the programme in that
No
respect.
change, very good.
And
Well, not very good, but no, very good in terms of good at, yeah.
yeah, and similarly for assignment 7, still 2 amber, so no change in terms of the status. However, I trust you noted progress has been made on those action plans.
Thank you. Now that might feel like a painful process to everybody, but what I think is a benefit here is you can see in the public domain that we've tracked the actions and they're recorded here, and you can see. So we have the previous status, and then we update the status. Now you can see the way it works. You all understand the process flow. Does anybody have any questions for Tony? Councillor Randall.
Yeah, only one. On those 2, on page 57, number 1, and page 61, number 1, obviously they both refer to the People's Panel. One is to get, to be involved in the annual review, and the other one is further publicity to increase the size, but they've both got the same date. But it would have been good to increase that People's Panel before maybe that we People Panel become involved in the annual review, or just a little, even though they're in June, perhaps one at the beginning of June and one at the end. We just might have got a bit more involvement in that. So it's just a comment.
That's a comment for
just a comment.
Tony to note, go back and reflect on. Thank you. What about one final question I want to put to, because this is a complicated enough document as it is, You can see that we've got assignment number 9, which is abandoned. We've all noted that's been abandoned. It's been there for a while. Would anybody mind if we remove that? Makes sense.
Makes
doesn't
very
it?
good sense of housekeeping at this particular moment in time in your year, Chairman.
Yes, so we'll remove that. We'll keep on all the other items because they're either in basically to be considered for the future and also those that have already started. So number 9 is problematic.
Why was it abandoned? I've totally forgotten that.
I think, well, we can look back at the minutes, but I think there was some issues of coherence. Thank you. Let's move on. Any Councillor Paul?
Yeah, thank you. Just to concur with Councillor Long regarding the last strategy meetings and your recommendations, unusual that recommendations went through without any adverse comments. That's a word of congratulations.
Because I think it was because it was well written.
Yeah,
and
I
that's
think so,
what we had earlier.
Self-praise is no praise at all, but yes, I do agree with that.
Yeah.
Page 57, item 2, with regard to plain English, etc., etc. I made a comment at strategy that the author of the procurement strategy attached on the final page a glossary of terms. And with so many acronyms flying here, there and everywhere, I think it would be a good suggestion for a glossary to be attached to every report. It's almost impossible to remember them all. Just a thought.
Yeah, thank you. I think we can reflect on, no disrespect to you, Councillor Patchett, the issue with that, and I think it was because it was not clearly laid out the logical flow. And I think one of the best ways, apart from using simple English or at least defining terms, as you go through, if you use an acronym, and we perhaps not all clear about it, just put it in brackets before. Sorry, put the acronym in brackets, put what it is before, and then you can use it as an acronym later. But absolutely, if there's anything that might require further definition, is at least to include it in the body of the text. I think our job in particular is to make it very clear to the layperson what we're talking about. It's very much about transparency and clarity and coherence. But thank you for that. Let's. Do we have any final comments on that one? If not,
can I just ask a question? Your big chart, this multi-coloured chart.
Yeah.
With regard to the pink areas, we've got future possible.
Sorry.
The
future possible. Yeah.
Pink areas.
Yeah.
I just thought it would be helpful. You've got one down here, empty commercial property.
Yep.
It doesn't say where the suggestion come from. And as people move on, etc., the new S&I panel might want to know where this has come from. And if there's a link to the person who suggested it, if they're still on the council,
it's a good point.
Whatever, they can go back and ask what they thought. And I thought it would be relevant for all the suggested ones.
What we'll do is we'll note that going forward. So I'll put pink items who recommended it. Sometimes it doesn't obviously come from one single person, but if we know the exact source, then we can always go back to them and say, what is it? Because on there we only keep high level detail. Yeah, absolutely. And of course, even before it gives a clue to why we thought about it in the first place, what performance issue gave rise to it. Thank you for that, Councillor Perry. Let's go on to item 8. This should be a separate one because we have already agreed for the last meeting that would come, Councillor Cribbin. Tonight, we couldn't make it, so we rolled that to the next one. Are we all happy to get Councillor Cribbin in next time?
Yes.
Good. Rarely on these meetings we're going to finish quite early. I think Councillor Ferry said to me he'd like to go by 8 o'clock, so there we are. Tony.
So just for clarification and to help Councillor Cribbin prepare, I made a suggestion earlier on about his role in respect of the environmental issues with the car wash situation.
Oh, as well, yeah, we'll ask him to talk about that as well.
But you've also asked me for a briefing paper, so you may want...
It's about the breadth of it, Tony, because the issues you've identified are many, planning, commercial, etc. If you can give us a broad viewpoint on what happens, and then Councillor Cribbin can also talk to it in any detail if he needs to. But we want the main document from you because it is much broader.
So in terms of what you're wanting from Councillor Cribbin,
It's an update, particularly on the usual suspects.
Update on the contract.
Yeah, updates on the contract performance, challenges, how it's been addressed. It's interesting, I don't know if it's every time I come to a scrutiny meeting, but I always tend to find the meeting sandwiches on the roundabout on scrutiny day, and again today was no exception. They were enjoying their sandwiches on the roundabout again. Sure they can eat, but I don't know if they have to go to the roundabout to eat their sandwiches. But that's the kind of usual stuff. But Tony, can you please have us a very specific, I guess a one-page on the specific areas of inquiry for the colleges. Councillor Long and Councillor Randall.
Sorry, you may regard this as pedantic, Chairman, but am I not right in believing that Councillor Cribbin is actually up for elections?
He is, so we're making the assumption that he's in, but actually what we should do is the portfolio order.
Which was the point I was trying to come back to.
But I can't even say in this committee that I hope it's Councillor Cribbin, but you know what I mean when I say that.
Politically incorrect, Chairman.
Politically incorrect in this committee. So it's a portfolio order at that point in time. If that's Councillor Cribbin, we look forward to seeing him. Any other? There's no other business, or urgent business. So in actual fact, rarely. Please don't get used to this. It's 10 to 8. We'll close the meeting. Thank you.